Welcome into the program. This is your game plan for retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning for your financial investment and retirement future. He is president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. Always a pleasure to be with you. Chris McIntire here, and we appreciate the time. Chris, thanks for joining us on another important program talking about what it takes to achieve that more confident financial future. And today, talking about what I have to imagine is probably like the number one question that you get asked, maybe in a couple different forms, but how do I know if I'm ready to retire, or how much do I need in order to be ready to retire? Kind of two forms of the same question, but I bet that's the leading reason why people come to see you at a certain point in time.
Yeah, no question about it there, buddy. And they have this big number in a 401k, and they're about ready to do something they've never done before, live off of that big number instead of putting number in it to make it even bigger. And if you think about the emotions of that, we live in a numbers world, so we're not really intimidated by any of that, and we have to save for our own retirement. So we're kind of used to it, and we see people that do things right, people that could have done things a little bit differently here, right? It's not necessarily a right or wrong issue here. It's not that cut and dry. So we're not nearly as intimidated by it because we go into it with some experience. I'm coming up on age 59, so get a little bit of wisdom over time. Peter is smart. I'm wise because I got gray hair.
I've got a few myself as well, Chris. You mentioned the direction of the money changing. Psychologically, is that a shock to the system for your clients? Like, does everything tighten up? Do we get a little bit more tense when we see the first withdrawal start to come out of our life savings and our retirement nest egg?
Yeah, it's no question about it. A good example would have been, had some clients retire in like 2022, just as they raised interest rates which pushed bond prices down, stock prices down. That's a real shock to the system. People say, hey, man, I retired. Now everything's fallen in value, that type of thing. And, thankfully, 2023, things have turned around here, and some of the income producing elements are doing better now, which started in the late part of 2022. Bond prices are coming back up, dividend stock prices coming back up. So there's been a nice recovery on that side of things. But, man, that is a shock to the system. Think about it. It's like, all of a sudden, you keep opening statements and things go down in value. And that's what happens with investments, And if I can, I'm going to transition here just a minute then, buddy, is, that's what's nice about dividend paying stocks, right? Is, if you've done the research right and you've got the good companies that likely aren't going to cut their dividend or reduce it, right? The price of their stock can go up and down, right? But you're living off of the dividend. That's what you're should be more concerned about, is the dividend, not the price of the stock. But that's not what we're attuned to in our accumulation phase of money. We want to see the balance go up and up and up, as opposed to, is the income staying the same regardless of what the balance is?
There are certain tools, certain types of investments and assets that are more geared toward income distribution or interest generation or the needs that we have in retirement. But by and large, Chris, is the Wall Street model really more geared toward a contributory phase where we are making those deposits, where we are putting away money rather than when we do end the paycheck and need to start making withdrawals?
Yeah, from the perspective of the people listening to the show today, it certainly is, because, they're wanting to invest and create more and more wealth. They're in the growth phase. They're not necessarily in the income phase. So, we can adjust that Wall Street model as they go from that accumulation phase into that income phase, like, going from growth stocks into dividend paying stocks, for example, utility companies, some of the banks, some of the more boring sectors, if you will. And then also looking at, bonds and, obviously with Brookstone Capital Management's assistance, we have some other unique vehicles like structured notes, covered call strategies that really help build yield and income over the traditional stock bond mutual fund, retirement lifestyle 2025 mutual fund that, 90% of the people watching the show that are working have their money in, probably.
Yep. Well, we got a great show, still more information to come to help you answer the question, am I ready to retire, or how much do I need to retire? Calculating that retirement number. So on this program, we'll discuss that calculation, the math behind it, the reason for implementing a specific retirement income first strategy, income allocation, what risks you need to specifically be aware of and address in your retirement strategy. We'll talk about the equivalent portfolio value, withdrawal rates, sequence risk, everything you need to know about answering that quintessential question. When can I retire, or how can I retire? And of course, if you'd like your specific answer, if you'd like to go through the protocol, the planning process, get the game plan for retirement, a written plan in your hands, pick up the phone and give Chris McIntire and McIntire Retirement Services a call, 800-868-1194. That is 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Or you can always visit online 24 hours a day at McIntireRetirementServices.com, McIntireRetirementServices.com. And if you are watching the podcast and the video online, links around the video on how to get in touch, or where you can get more information. And if you are listening on the radio, we do encourage you to go and check the archives. We've got a wealth of knowledge, no pun intended there, but certainly a play on words, a wealth of knowledge in the archives for the podcast episodes of McIntyre Retirement Services with Chris McIntyre, on almost any topic and subject that you can imagine. And folks come in all the time saying, hey, we've watched the videos on XYZ, on Roth conversions, on caring for loved ones, on tax management, and here's what we need to better understand or address in our planning. So a great library catalog of episodes on important financial and retirement planning topics there, again, at McIntireRetirementServices.com. Or again, if you'd like the game plan for retirement, give a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. So Chris, I mean, is there truly a point where people can confidently say, I am ready to retire, I know I can do this and make it through with everything that could happen or be in front of us over a 30 plus year retirement? Is that truly possible?
Yeah, it certainly is, Peter. We have some folks that just have enough wealth that, they could really weather any particular storm that could hit them. Okay. And I think, for most of us here in Northern Ohio, there are some that are very comfortable with their retirement, and it might be because they have pensions and Social Security benefits, not big fat 401ks, right? And if you think about that for a second, they have structured, guaranteed income, and so they have a lot of peace of mind. And I remember here, it was probably September, October. I met with some nice folks that weren't clients. They came to one of our educational events that we did at one of the colleges here. And, we were looking over their income and, a couple of different pensions. They both had pensions. One was in the military, so they had some additional pieces, Social Security benefits. And I remember the wife saying, well, we don't really worry about the market because we don't need to live off of any of that. I mean,
pretty confident statement.
Think about that statement right there. Yep. We don't really worry about the market because we don't live off of our investments, right? That's what we try and help our people do as well is, look, we structure income plans. And then obviously we also have an investment plan that may not be part of the income plan for folks, depending on the nest egg we're dealing with. And, you were talking there, Peter, about, the wealth of information, no pun intended, throw it back at you. Jason and I are working up there at the office in Perrysburg on, going to be doing a lot more videos and all that with your help as well, too. And it's funny, I go on YouTube and I see all these different things now. You do one quick search and all of a sudden, they fill your feed with everything. And, I thought there was a lot of mis or disinformation just out there in general. And now you start adding social media to everything. So we're going to try and keep things pretty simple here. You don't see me wearing a white shirt and a tie in our videos and whatnot. Today I got a, half blue hoodie going. We take a little, little more relaxed approach to some of this.
Yep, yep. But still great information, regardless of the financial advisor official dress code, right? The suit does not make the advisor. Oh yeah, and you got your Wings coffee cup there as well.
Yeah, we're Red Wings fans around here, guys.
All
For
right.
those of you that catch us on the podcast or see the video of the show.
You mentioned though, like that couple with the income in place and how the ups and downs of the market don't affect them. That's not the majority of people. I don't believe with this generation. I mean, this year we are hitting the peak of the bell curve of the baby boom generation retirement. And by and large, this generation is the lump sum generation, meaning they've been saving and putting money away into their 401k as compared to the previous generation, which was the pension retirement generation. So this generation has more wealth, more lump sum than any previous generation because they've been Wall Street investors. And yet, Chris, still more uncertainty about the confidence level for their retirement and making that money last. Is that a note on the need and the value of those pensions and how important they were, or at least setting up the income plan that this generation, regardless of the lump sum and the wealth, still has those underlying fears and apprehensions and questions?
Peter, I just read in the Wall Street Journal here in the first week of February that they were talking about the amount of people over the age of 65, and they mentioned that this is the non-pension people generation, basically. So to tie that in, a recent article in the Wall Street Journal right onto this topic where you went. And I was going to mention it later in the show, so we're on the same wavelength here. But very interesting that people retire today with more wealth than probably their parents' generation, but their parents' generation retired with pensions, not big 401ks. So, companies have been able to offload those pension liabilities into lump sum rollovers if they have that ability, but also then contributing to their 401ks and let the employees be responsible for the savings, which obviously has created more wealth. You can put more money into 401ks now than ever before. So I think those two go hand in hand, but we're also living longer. Okay? But are we living a long, healthy life? Or, like my mom's 86 years old, we just dealing with some health issues, as we're recording the show. And, a month in an assisted living facility was $8,500, 1 month.
Wow.
So, I mean, think how much more we can spend. So, retiring with more wealth doesn't mean you're going to pass all of that on. Depends what how you plan for.
Well, and you mentioned the difference in wealth levels. The person with $5 million and the person with $500,000 probably have different concerns when answering that question. Am I ready to retire? One's probably not concerned with running out of money over the course of retirement, I guess, depending on how much they're spending. But would seem like they should be in a much more confident kind of situation to answer that particular question. But there are still concerns, and I bet on either side of that equation, both of them still want to be efficient as possible with their money, which is really going to boil down to the planning that they have put in place.
Yeah, no, without question, planning is so very important. We talk about this all the time. It's nice when we get the perfect scenario is, somebody's going to retire at age 65. And if we can start working with them at age 60, basically, and start getting things in place, ahead of time and say, look, let's get this piece. This is going to be for your income in 5 to 6 years. If we can do that 5 years ahead of time, and even 2 and 3 years, obviously, but we're talking about the perfect scenario is, start planning for retirement years before you retire. And it's a little bit more than just throwing money in the 401k, right? That's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but there are other aspects that you need to incorporate in your retirement before you say, hey, I'm done working. Now let's plan my retirement. You need to, the sooner you start that, and there's a tax piece to that. There's an investment piece to that. There's a legal piece to that with your estate planning documents, the powers of attorney, and all of those things to, a lot of housekeeping needs to be done. And that's just normal, guys. I think most of the baby boom generation here, they've been dealing with some aging parents and whatnot, and the explosion in dementia and Alzheimer's in the United States because we have an aging population, and we're seeing that so much more prevalent. Is I work with a lot of folks that have that with a loved one, and they're like, all right, what can we do now? Like, well, here's what we can do now, but here's what people who are listening to the show today need to do before that. Talk about long-term care, talk about $100,000 a year in potential health care costs,
Yeah.
and how to mitigate that risk. Yep.
Well, we get the plan together, Chris, and so we've got the document, the written plan that gives us the confidence to say, yes, I do think that I can retire successfully. And you mentioned housekeeping. I know when I clean the house on the weekends, it looks great, and then by Tuesday or Wednesday, it's messy again. So it's not just a one-time thing, right? That you do it and it's done. It is an ongoing process. The plan is going to give you that confidence, but it still takes monitoring. It still takes maintenance, and that's a big part of the ongoing responsibility that you take off of your clients' shoulders and take on for them, that you assume that responsibility of continuing to monitor the plan, bringing things to their attention that they may need to understand or pay attention to, and then the strategies to help them better optimize their portfolio, both on the income and on the rate of return investment side.
Yep. And, sometimes we have to talk them off the cliffs there, if you will, when the dividend stock prices go down and markets and whatnot go down, that, look, that happens in the cycle, in an economic cycle. And, I'd say what has helped is, the rising interest rates has helped certain parts of the investment world because, bonds are paying a higher interest rate, CDs, for example, money market accounts, we can pick up some a little bit more income, a little safer is probably a decent way of saying that here. When interest rates were so low, all that, you had to use equities basically, or real estate or something to help grow those dollars. And now we can widen out the asset class base. So diversification's, coming back into the forefront of retirement planning and income planning for everybody. And, not to discount the use of, of annuities as well, right? Because, there is only one instrument on the face of the planet that, can give you an income for the rest of your life. And it's why many of the large corporations that employ hundreds of thousands of people have moved their pensions to insurance companies to make sure that those payments go out for the rest of those clients' lives.
Well, again, we are talking with Chris McIntire. We are talking about how to answer that question, am I ready to retire? If that is a question on your mind, or even if you're already retired and want to make sure that the plan is working efficiently and optimally, pick up the phone, give McIntire Retirement Services a call for that complimentary planning review and strategy session, or even just to ask a few quick direct questions over the phone to the team, the planning team there at McIntire Retirement Services. You can reach out for that and get answers to your questions. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. But the true value of the program is the opportunity then to get that written plan in place, the game plan for retirement, addressing income, investments, taxes, healthcare, legacy, and bringing it all together. All of the pieces are important, but the cohesion and how everything is coordinated is really going to determine the success of your plan. And that's what they do there. Again, at McIntire Retirement Services, your resource, Northwestern Ohio, offices conveniently located across Northwestern Ohio. So close by to you, or again, the ease and convenience of technology allows for virtual meetings if you'd prefer that way in the process as well. But get the conversation started. Pick up the phone and give a call. 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194, or visit online, McIntyreRetirementServices.com. McIntyreRetirementServices.com. So as we have been discussing this question, Chris, what I've really gained and gathered is that when we look at retiring, it's the day after retirement. It's not that we don't need an income. It's that we don't have an income. We have our assets, but retirement really is an income first kind of problem that we need to solve.
Yeah, no question about it. Understanding how do we fix the monthly budget. Where is that money coming from to cover the basic living expenses? And, that's the first thing that we try to solve for when we're putting a whole plan together. And, is it an easy solution when we say, hey, we can carve a little piece off here and we got it covered, basic living expenses, and then we got a bigger piece over here, to, invest, icing on the cake, however you want to describe that, get your long-term growth and whatnot. And then sometimes, everybody, we see so many different folks. Some of them, we need to carve a bigger piece of that nest egg off to get that retirement income. Because, it's often when people retire that they have gotten rid of their life insurance policies because they don't have any debt, right? House is paid off, kids went to college, on and on. Okay. But then when they retire, they said, all right, well, I've got Social Security. My spouse has got Social Security and a possible pension in there. Okay, but when one of them passes away, you're going to lose a Social Security benefit. The pension may have the survivor benefit on it, but you're going to lose one of those Social Security benefits. And typically you get the highest of the two, right? It's a little more elaborate than that. But, if your husband makes $3,000 a month and you make $2,000 and he passes away, you're going to make essentially get his $3,000 a month, but you're going to lose your $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year. How do you make that up? And, you could certainly say, well, if one of them passes away, they don't need all of the income, but it certainly isn't in half,
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And I'll make a joke here, right? Because if the husband passed away, the golf membership can expire, but perhaps the shopping side of it could increase too.
We find ways, it seems, to spend whatever money that we have, and in some cases, Chris, and then some in today's society. But those factors that you're talking about there, we do need to know those ahead of time, right? And a lot of people have not experienced retirement before, so they may not know the implications and consequences of decisions that they are making in that retirement window, and what consequences they will have 15, 20, 25, 30 years later. But those are important decisions that do impact the duration of the rest of our lives. And that's why having the perspective of an experienced, qualified financial and retirement professional who has seen retirement many times over, has seen it play through its duration, and what works and what doesn't, is so important and valuable, ladies and gentlemen. Making decisions on optimizing Social Security is a big piece of it. Maybe it's not everything you're relying on, but it definitely provides a lot of additional income, and depending on your choice and decision, it could be more or less. And I'd rather that money come from Social Security than my personal portfolio, or not be there at all. So for that alone, it's worth getting the game plan for retirement, sitting down and designing that plan and looking at optimizing Social Security. Again, give a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. And you really just walked through a little bit of the back of the napkin or back of the envelope math there, Chris, in talking about figuring this out. But there is some math that goes into figuring out what is your portfolio going to need to do. Like, what are the requirements? What is the reliance that we are going to place on our portfolio in the year and years after we do retire? And you walk through that math part of it to figure out how to structure and allocate and position the dollars, correct?
Yes. And, we'll use basic numbers here. So, if somebody has $1 million and they need $40,000 a year off of that portfolio, that's that 4% withdrawal rate, if you will. And okay, well, how do we structure? What are all the options that we can utilize to generate that $40,000 of income they need? And again, we're talking about income, not growth, right? We don't necessarily have to throw that into AI.
There's a big difference there. There is a big difference there. And I think that's a common misconception. People say, well, whatever my portfolio grows, I'll just be able to take as income, which works in up years. But what are you going to do in down years, right? You don't have the ability to add what the market has lost back in to float in most cases.
Correct. And that's where, bonds can play a part in that. That's where dividend paying stocks can play a part in that. Options strategies, that we utilize with Brookstone, the annuity side of things. So again, a myriad of different investments And that just simply helps diversify. And, that's in clients' best interest to diversify and consider everything. And, there may be some talking heads out there that run some commercials and things like that it might not be in their best interest for the clients to actually do different things. And,
Yep.
we can have that argument and at some point too.
All right, it's time for our fire round. Quick hit 5 fast questions. Chris, number 1, do investors without an income allocation plan or specific written plan know how much their portfolio will be able to produce for income?
No, typically not, because they don't even know what it's invested in a lot of times and what type of dividend rate or interest rate it's spinning off.
Do retirees without a specific written income plan understand the sequence and the order of operations in which accounts to pull from first, second, last, and that order in order to be as efficient as possible?
Well, if they had one of the diversified portfolios you and I were just talking about, they probably would. But, if they're just getting ready to retire and you've got a retirement lifestyle 2025 fund, for example, probably have no idea what that's going to spin off.
You mentioned the 4% rule, Chris. Does Wall Street's 4% rule still hold true, and is it reliable?
It's a theory. So, it's not a law that's etched in stone anywhere. It was from a California financial planner that came up with it, and it had a, relatively high degree of success if everything worked out right. Okay. Well, sometimes things don't work out right. We don't know what the sequence of returns of the stock market is going to be. So I'd give you an example. You got $1 million today and you retire and say, all right, I'm going to live off of the 4% rule. Okay. And all of a sudden, a year later, your portfolio is worth 20% less. Right. Well, now you're not living off of 4% and you're taking money out of it. So, the sequence of returns risk certainly can, throw a wrench into that one. That's probably the biggest risk for folks living off of the 4% rule.
Number 4, Chris, Social Security. Does it make sense to take time to specifically strategize on Social Security before we make a decision on claiming?
Yeah, no question about that, especially for the married couples, right? Does one spouse take it early, one spouse wait until later? Factors that can help with that decision are, what type of investment plan do you have, right? If the market's going good, right, maybe you can wait a little bit longer and get a greater Social Security benefit. The market goes south, maybe you say, all right, I'm going to take my Social Security now and take some pressure off the withdrawal rate of my portfolio.
And finally, Chris, the psychology of language, because words matter. Why does everybody hate a budget, but everybody needs a spending plan?
Yeah, well, I think we probably watch too much national news and we see what happens with the budget that our elected officials run at $34 trillion. And, if I mention a budget, it gets met with mixed reactions on both parts, right? Let's be fair. Yep.
People cringe at it, but the spending plan that you help people create for retirement helps them to spend with more confidence and freedom. And that's what the process is really all about, ladies and gentlemen, getting that income allocation, that game plan for retirement, the written plan in place, looking at an income, investments, taxes, healthcare, legacy, helping you optimize Social Security, address the potholes, the potential pitfalls and what ifs, all addressing all of the variables. You can make sure that you have that high level, high degree of confidence in answering the question, am I ready to retire? Am I doing the best things for my retirement, even if you're already there? Pick up the phone, give a call to Chris McIntire, McIntire Retirement Services. They'd love to hear from you, answer any questions that you have, and set up a time to meet and go over your plan in person or virtually. No cost, no obligation, and create the true plan, bringing it all together, the game plan for retirement. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194 is the number to call, or you can go online, McIntireRetirementServices.com. Chris, we always appreciate your time.
Hey, my pleasure. Good to be with everybody. Stay safe out there. Thank you.
Tune into Chris McIntire's full radio program and visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntyre. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.